So happy to be with you this morning. Lorenzo is away celebrating a marriage this morning. So he asked me if I could be willing to share the message with you this morning. The thing is with River's Edge, there's a lot of talent, a lot of people serving in all different areas. We have A team everywhere, and we have backup plan with other A team. So it's A team, A team, A team, except for message. We're going from A team to D team. So that's me this morning. I'm kidding. But seriously, I really appreciate that moment because also it's an awesome manifestation of the trust and the faith that our pastor have. So it takes a lot of faith to let me alone here this morning. So you can see that he's a man of faith. But no, seriously, I always like to do that kind of things because it's a good opportunity to laugh a little bit. And it's always a bit awkward when I try to laugh about someone. So I really try to make you laugh about me. It's better, okay? So that's the reason why I'm doing that. But seriously, this morning, what I wanted to talk with you is about a little book that I've read recently. It's not, I've almost finished it, but it's a book that is called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's by a guy named Marshall Goldsmith. And that guy essentially is a professional coach helping people to develop new habits for executive and enterprise and other area as well. So not necessarily a recent book, but really interesting book to read. And essentially, what is that book about? It's about some habit that we need to break if we want to move forward, if we want to be a better colleague. So sometimes we develop some habit that served us well to a certain extent, and then eventually if we want to pass that stage, let's say we need to break those habits. So that's the book that I wanted to talk to you about, but especially, not necessarily I want to talk to you about a book necessarily this morning, but more about an idea that made me ponder about different things. One of the habits that we need to, that the author is saying that we need to break is the goal obsession. So being overly obsessed by our goal. He's saying that this is an habit that we need to try to get rid of. So that's kind of a bizarre thing because being goal obsessed is something that fueled us in our day-to-day life and that makes sure that we achieve something, and that it could be in different contexts, the work context, our family context, church context, community service, whatever. So being goal obsessed is a good thing. Especially if we consider also that not being goal obsessed, it will derive ourselves towards something that will be a little bit more sloppy in terms of mindset. So I think that that goal obsession could be something that could cause some kind of problem, and this is what the author is writing in his book about that. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that taken too far, it can become a blatant cause of failure. In its broadest form, goal obsession is the force at play when we get so wrapped up in achieving our goal that we do it at the expense of a larger mission. So that's where goal obsession could be a weakness. And this is something that the author is saying you need to take care and you need to be thoughtful about that if you're too much goal obsessed or too focused on the different purpose or objectives in your life. But this was something interesting, but where really it got my curiosity picked was about a study that has been performed in 1973 by two behavioral scientists, and that study was about the Good Samaritan. And look at the context of that story. That's really interesting. So they did that in Princeton University with student in theology. So they were students in theology at university, and they asked to a group of students in theology to prepare and give a sermon to the chapel nearby in the campus. And they said to one part of the group, "You're in a hurry. People are waiting at the chapel." And they said to the other group, "It's maybe an hour or two, and you have plenty of time." So have you ever heard about that study? Yeah, someone? Yeah, one person, perfect. You can quit, no, there's something else with that. So only one person, so that's good. So, but please stay awake, okay? Because there will still more to that story in the next coming minutes. So interesting story, because like seeing scientific taking things in the gospel and trying to demonstrate that in reality, I haven't really found that much of these things. So I really was hooked with that story. Are you interested to know a little bit more about that, or no? You don't care? Okay, perfect. 2-3%. The rest you can quit also. So perfect. It's going to be. Last week it was Easter Sunday. We had to add chair. That was amazing. Like people, we added chair there, and virtually people were standing, so we added virtual sofa also on the web live session, so that was amazing. So anyway, so no, I'm just kidding, stay with us please. And I forgot to introduce myself, so I'm Yohan, by the way, part of the overseer here at River's Edge. I really enjoy the opportunity to be with you this morning. So that study, what happened with this is that 90%, okay, I forgot to say to you, the message they needed to deliver at the chapel was about the parable of the Good Samaritan. Okay, so that was the message. They were in a hurry. People were waiting for them. And what happened? They hired an actor that was in the path from where the students were to the chapel, and that actor was coughing and was suffering and was really, you can't miss that guy. So what happened is that 90% of the students could totally avoid and ignore the suffering person, the person that was in help. In fact, some of them really just jumped over that person in their hurry. So that's really what was preoccupying me. You all realize that I'm also, as a sideline, an English teacher. Not many students. No, Alexi, you're right. No, not many students. So, my preoccupation about that, let's say it that way, was in that parable. Was this really what Jesus had in mind when he shared that parable with us? And also, more specifically, what I would like to suggest you to take a look this morning is maybe some blind spot to take care of our neighbor. Because these guys, girls, you're in theology. You probably have an interest or a certain altruistic kind of behavior that is fueling you. And then especially on that parable, but still like not being able to help our neighbor. So it's not necessarily some kind of things that is necessarily diabolical plot or something that is really bad, but maybe more inherent to what we are acting as human beings. So that's the reason why I was interested to take a further look to what could be some blind spot to take care of our neighbor. Does it make sense for you? Yeah? Ça vous intéresse? Great, excellent. Because again, no other plan for this morning. Okay. So you all guess which scripture passage will look. Someone who want to guess what will be this passage this morning? No? The good, no, Jonah. Yeah, you know, no, yes, the Good Samaritan. Okay, perfect. So let's take a look at that passage quickly. So it's in Luke chapter 10. So on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Expert in the law, though, obviously, like in that context, the religious people have been able to, that was really some kind of a métier, that they were doing that, they were paid to, in fact, they were a lawyer, okay? Let's say that this expert of the law, let's call him a lawyer because that's exactly the best reference we can do with today. So, expert of the law, the religious law, he wanted to test Jesus and ask a question. And when they wanted to test Jesus, it's really important that it was not kind of an exam, an academic question, okay? It was really to be able to catch Jesus because Jesus was really disturbing the establishment, the religious establishment, and how things were done. And the idea was to be able to publicly make Jesus say something that will be able to accuse him eventually. So that's what they were trying to do, but they were not tired yet. Eventually, they just got tired because they always been the one that been caught in the process and not Jesus. But at that moment, he have not realized that yet. So he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? Jesus replied, how do you read it? So he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus said, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. So it could be a nice exchange, and then we pass to another call, another customer. But again, the intent was to really catch Jesus with that. So the lawyer was not necessarily happy with that because he's the one that really lost the first round, that first exchange. Jesus answered correctly. So he wanted to justify himself, so add another quote on that. So he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? So that's really the question that the parable is really talking about. It's bringing an answer to the question, who is our neighbor? So the continuity of the verse is on the next slide. So in reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. So that's what is happening in that story. We probably always heard dozens of times that story, but I want to put some attention and some emphasis on two things. The first thing here is these two guys are not necessarily malevolent, okay? And we'll come to the religious part of their role in the story after. But we can see, and I'm not saying that this is an explanation and this is what really Jesus had in his mind when he was talking about that parable, but that's certainly something that we can learn from. So these two guys were having some kind of business to do. They were having, you can imagine them having like some kind of an agenda, people to meet, people to take care of, a job to do. They have some kind of activities in their day-to-day lives that needed to be performed. So that's maybe some of the things that could explain their behavior. Or they may be, like in the study that we just talked about, they were maybe in a hurry from one place to another, and they really needed to rush to something. And so this brings light to the first element that I've talked in the introduction about. One of the blind spots that we can have is being in a hurry or being overly focused. So when we are in our life in a hurry, or we realize that we have a major focus, there should be some kind of a beep beep. Okay, you know, and when we're talking about blind spot, if I was an infographic man or woman, whatever, man for me, if I was an infographic, I would have like some kind of a detection system, blind spot for neighbor. So it should have like some kind of alarm in our head when we're seeing that we're running at a fast pace. And I don't know about your life, but my life is some kind of a pace around 100 kilometers per hour, okay? Taking care of kids, wife, work, social involvement, friends, car maintenance, house maintenance, cleaning myself also, and making sure that all of that, it's kind of a really, really, really fast pace. Any of you are living in fast pace, or you're all retired? Mike, I look at you now. Retired, fast pace. So when we're in that kind of situation, and think about the theologian student, when they were in a hurry situation, 90% of them ignore the neighbor. So it's like the way we're wired. So when we're too busy, when we're in a hurry, we need to develop some kind of conscious about that and take a step back and look at the situation and seeing if we're focusing on the right thing. And if we're missing by focusing on one thing, maybe missing a greater mission. And let me be really specific. For instance, you're maybe working extremely hard to earn money for your family, but by doing so, you're neglecting the very family that you're working for. Does it make sense? Qu'est-ce que je dis là? Do you understand me? Ça fait du sens? So that's the kind of trap, that's the kind of blind spot that it was maybe implied in the parable. But let me be another notch really, really specific. I'll show you, there's a picture on the nightstand of my wife, a beautiful family picture that I want to share with you right now. It's a beautiful family picture. What is missing? We're not divorced yet. Okay, so next point. I guess I made my point. No, but seriously, a few years ago, I look back at that picture and really I had some regrets. I really had some regrets. Because at that time I was busy on something, focusing, goal obsessed, whatever. I was busy and said to myself, I'm gonna take time. See, we're gonna do a photo shoot eventually. Yeah, they're married now, my kids. No, j'exagère, mais we're older than that. So, no, but seriously, that was my mindset at the moment. But seriously, I missed an opportunity. And at some point, I had regrets. Now it's more a reminder of opportunity that I don't want to miss in the future. So when we look at yourself and we feel that we're overly in a hurry, overly focused on some objective, please take a step back. And if you believe in Jesus, and if you have faith in his power, then ask him some enlightenment. Ask him, like, his power to reveal to you things that are maybe not as good, even if we are thinking that we're doing good things. Does it make sense in terms of first blind spot, being in a hurry or being overly focused? That may be what was happening in that story. These two guys were maybe too busy or in a hurry. The other point is really a little bit more delicate, but I really think it's worth to be mentioned. These two guys in the story, we're talking about a Levite and a priest. Both of them, we could expand on what was the role in the history, but the only thing that needs to be retained from that is that they were religious people, okay? They had religious office to do, and they were doing their best in that matter. But what we need to understand is that as religious people, out of purity rules, they weren't allowed to touch a corpse or blood or be in contact because that will be disqualifying them for a certain period of time to conduct their office or to serve appropriately in their role. Jusque-là, so far, so good? Ça va? Okay? So, that's really interesting in terms of historic things and fact to know, because it could impress family in summer party. Eventually we'll have summer or spring, whatever. But that's kind of interesting fact about history of Israel and Jews' religion at that time. But that's not really what is useful in terms of application in our life. And I want to talk to you about something really specific, that sometimes another blind spot is that we can be blinded by a religious duty or blinded by religious purity and ignore our neighbor, okay? That's maybe what happened in that story, okay? Again, what does it mean like 2020-something years after that story? It could mean something along these lines. You have your spiritual journey with Christ, you serve the Lord with all your heart, and you're invited to your best friend marriage. However, it's maybe in a church of a different faith, or it's in a church of a different faith, or it even forces you or like accommodates you in terms of your belief when you're participating in that marriage. It could be a funeral, the same thing. Ritual also that your friend asks you to partake on. And for, again, religious reason or purity reason, you may abstain from that. And this morning, I'm not there to judge about that, not at all. I'm not here to even give you an idea about what's the right way. But what I want all of us to be aware of is that when there is two concurrent good things that happens, okay, so in these specific situation, good thing could be to attend funeral, and good thing could be to respect what are your conviction about purity or religion or whatever. Two good things. When there's a competition between two good things, can I ask you and beg you in God's love to take a moment and pray about that, okay? And let me be extremely specific and push that idea a little bit further. Just to be extremely clear on that matter. You could be invited to a gay marriage, no matter what is your gay orientation and belief around that. I'm not there to pledge. I'll never use that platform to have any thoughts and give any advice. Ça, je veux pas rentrer là-dedans. The only thing that is extremely important, you're invited to that, you have your conviction, and your friends want you there. So you have, again, a choice between two good things, okay? And you have your conviction. Please, please, as I mentioned before, take the time to pray and discern what is the appropriate choice to do in this situation. And now, you can say to yourself, oh my gosh, Yohan, have you really said these kind of things? Are you crazy? Moi, peut-être. Ça me fait pas plaisir. It's not a pleasure to enter in that kind of discussion with you this morning, but I've seen so much family, friends, relationship destroyed by these kind of view, okay? And it takes a lot of wisdom to approach that. We cannot enter in these kind of choice by being religious. Because, again, Jesus never wanted to create a religion. I'm not saying in any way what is the right thing to do. I'm just saying that I truly believe that Jesus can reveal us what is the right thing to do, the right way to preserve relationship and to love our neighbor in that kind of situation. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Because I'm tired of churches and people that have been hurted, and then we'll never see these people again in our walls because of things that hurt them so much. C'est ça. C'est ça la vraie vie. C'est comme ça que ça arrive. So let me push that a little further. Peut-être que vous en avez assez, hein? But we're there. Same thing about family. In the name of religion, in the name of social service, we neglected our families sometimes. But the priorities are extremely clear. Family first. If you're not taking care, in Timothy, we have a wonderful verse of the Apostle Paul, and saying, if you're not taking care of your family, you're worse than an unbeliever. That's what is written in Timothy. And again, why I'm saying this morning? Because our neighbor, again, love your God with all your heart and love your neighbor. Your neighbor is necessarily your family, friends, colleague, etc. So again, sometimes in the name of the service to community, in the name of service to the church, we neglect our first priority. And why is it so important? Because people are still suffering from that kind of lack of wisdom and choice of priority. C'est comme ça. So, and people need to be delivered, to ask forgiveness, and both parties are suffering in that kind of things. So, again, for the love of God, when you're confronted to a situation of doing some kind of good, and doing some kind of good related to your belief, puis c'est correct. I'm not saying what is the good choice. I'm just saying two good things and a priority between two good things. Red light, on your knees, pray and ask God wisdom. Does this make sense? Ça fait du sens? Lastly, if we're going through the rest of the parable, at the next slide, which is the verse, I don't know, nope, not this one, Luke 10 something, please. Next one, that was the one I was talking about. Again, perfect. So, last point. These two elements that I just talked to you, being overly focused or in a hurry, or having a blind spot because of religious duty or of religious duty or priority, these are the two blind spots that we could imply from the parable. But that's certainly not the main point that Jesus had on his mind, because the main point is revealed here. In reply, Jesus said, attacked by robbers. No, two slides a little bit further. When, in fact, I'm gonna read it to you right now. At maybe 8, 9, 10 slide. Sorry, guys. Okay. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, come where the man was. Excellent. Parfait. You found it. Thank you. A Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. Samaritan, historical word about Samaritan. We can talk hours about Samaritan and Jews, but suffice it to say that Samaritan and Jews were fire and water, okay? Politically far away, religiously far away, philosophically far away. They fighted each other, literally. C'est vraiment pas chic, okay? They hated each other, okay? So the two first characters in the story, so a Jew's asking, who's my neighbor? And then the two first characters are religious people, Jews, good Jews, religious people. So we could assume that the story would unfold perfectly. But then, not. And then now the hero is the anti-hero, because the hero is a Samaritan. Just saying the word Samaritan, there's a goût of vomi in the Jews at that time. You'll see that a little bit later, okay? So you can imagine the surprise of that expert of the law when Jesus put that guy in the situation, and then we'll continue. He went to him and bandaged his wound, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave its money and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Next slide, please. Which of these three That's the question Jesus is asking to the expert of the law. Do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, look at the answer, not the, he said, the one who had mercy on him, because there's just, how can that guy do that? Jesus told him, go and do likewise. That's the end of story. And so typically when we're talking and we're using that parable to say, so do some good thing to the people around you. That's typically the general sense that we are deducting from that parable. But when we dig a little bit deeper about that, you understand something, is that for that expert of the law, God is the God of Israel, okay? Therefore, God is loving righteous Jew. And therefore, a righteous Jew neighbor is deserving my love and is worthy of my love and is my neighbor, okay? God of Israel, righteous Jew, love, righteous Jew. That's the kind of correct sequence. And if you don't believe me, look at how Jewish people were isolated if they were tax collector or doing anything that was not called right, okay, to that time. So that was the sequence. But then Jesus, what is he saying to that guy there, to that expert of the law? In other words, he's saying, hey, buddy, it could have been said that way, but he wasn't using the word buddy yet. But he would have said, hey, buddy, you know, if you're not considering the Samaritan your neighbor, you may be the Jew that will rot on the road and never obtain the help you needed. So that was the story. That was the real story of the Samaritan. So what was Jesus saying behind of that is that, oh yeah, God is the God of Israel. No doubt about that. But God is the God of the whole world. And Israel, of course, is comprised in the whole world. And God is loving and consider worthy of his love, not the Jews and the righteous Jews only, the whole world. Therefore, you should consider neighbor, everybody that I consider worthy of my love, which is everyone, okay? And so that was exactly what Jesus had on his mind when he tried to flip the story upside down, and even at the end of the passage, he asked, who has been the neighbor of the guy that was suffering? And that was the question at the end of the day. He was not asking, okay, you, a so-called fellow righteous Jew, who is your neighbor? He's flipping the situation around and saying, okay, you are in need, and who has been a neighbor to you? And so, and I'll ask the worship team to come up on stage. So today, about that last blind spot is that if there's one thing that Jesus wanted us to understand about that parable, is the fact that the neighbor is not necessarily the expected one. The neighbor in our lives, for sure, there are the expected one, the one that are close to us. But that was not what that story was about. That story was about people that were philosophically, religiously, maybe politically far from us. And these are the neighbor that Jesus encouraged us to exercise and help and consider in our day-to-day life. The same way he does, and he cares, and he loves for the whole humanity. That's what that story is about. It's just not helping the people, the close circle to us, which is pretty good to do that. But it's also speaking Jesus, coming back to the song we sang together and that we'll sing in a few minutes. It's speaking Jesus not only on those closer one to us, but considering our neighbor, even the distant one, the one that we're distant in our heart, in our mind, in terms of values, in terms of behavior, in terms of whatever they're doing that we're considering, il me dérange. See, it's disturbing. It's not in alignment with me. But guess what that story is telling us? Is that that person, that disturbing person, is our neighbor. That person is especially worthy of our love, as we are worthy of the love of God, and therefore we should exercise the love to that person. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? And that's the radical message of that parable. Jesus wanted to, for the people of his time, stop considering Romans, Samaritans, unbelievers, these strangers, these people that are unworthy, that we need to isolate them, that we need to not talk to them, not touch to them, not spend time with them, not love them, not do nothing. But Jesus is flipping that upside down, saying, that's not my economy. In my kingdom, that's not the way it works. Therefore, us as a community, this is what we strive to be in River's Edge and in a lot of other Christian community. How can we be a welcoming community? How can we be able to speak Jesus in people's life no matter where they stand in their journey, and exercising that love your neighbor properly to these people? Ça fait du sens? Yeah? Can we stand together? So let's say I speak Jesus together.